Hey, step to the plate, I'ma swing for the fence. Throw me the lob, I'ma dunk it like Vince. They think I'm from Sac with the way that I'm ballin'. I feel like a king, but I'm fresher than Prince. Baltimore raised and fly like a raven. Made it through mazes, that shit amazing. Vision so clear, they thought I got LASIK. Cradle to grave, we pounding that pavement. Made up my mind, told them pass me the rock with the game on the line. I'm taking a shot. Shit, all of my life had to play from behind. And now they just watch, like, is he gon' stop? I tell them I can't. They think it's a game, they take me for joke, I just laugh to the bank.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the WWB podcast. And look, I got a special guest on today, a gentleman who is extremely talented. He's part of a trios tag team in the podcasting world, a Chicago native, an artist, a writer, a wanderer, a thinker, a troublemaker, an advocate, and a Chicagoan. All right, so everybody welcome in my brother, Mr. Phil Lindsey.
Well, no.
Yeah, Mr. Lindsey, man, it's so nice getting you on the pod, bro. Got to see you at Battle Slam. That was really awesome to see you in person. I was like, that's Phil Lindsey.
Yeah, it was good to see you.
Yeah, brother, it's so awesome, man. It was a really good event, and it was nice just to see you. I really admire what you and your cohorts do as well. So talented. So for the audience who doesn't know who you are, Mr. Phil, we obviously know the podcast Grapsody, and we'll get into that later. We'll kind of put a carrot out there and get people interested. But let's talk about you as a person outside of Grapsody, right? You are a Chicagoan, so I have a question for you. What part of Chi-Town are you from?
Southside.
So you're okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Southside. I've lived on Southside most of my life. I lived in the suburbs for a little bit, but mostly Southside.
I love it. Okay. Now, have you ever watched that TV show on HBO Max called Southside?
Yeah.
Yo, it's like my favorite show comedy-wise. Do you like that show?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're from the city, like, you get a lot of the in references. Yeah, it's a great show.
Okay, great. Yeah. So for people who are listening, you should really watch it. It's just, couple of things that I've always admired about Chicago. First of all, the accent is cool as hell. Okay. Lupe Fiasco. You got Common coming from there. You got Twista coming from there. You have a wide, obviously Kanye West and many others who've come from Chicago, but you have such a diversity in hip hop culture and just culture in whole. Talk about, from your perspective, because I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I'm from. But talk about that Chicago accent, man, because it seems like depending on where you're from, there's like the more Chicago, and then there's like it's like a more of a, it's another one that's a little bit more like Bernie Mac-ish. Kind of talk about the Chicago accent. Is there like a joke in the city of different accents that people make fun of being from different sides of town?
I actually don't realize I have an accent until I like leave the city and people are like, yeah, you guys kind of have an accent up there. A lot of Black people that are in Chicago migrated here from the South. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of like a Southern dialect that people are hearing that is kind of like, I don't know, I guess Midwesternish. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, a good amount of Black people I know that are from Chicago came from somewhere else, so their family came from Chicago.
Yes, yeah. Same thing with Baltimore. My grandparents came from Charleston, South Carolina, and North Carolina. So yeah, and we all have. It's interesting how accents, because Black Baltimoreans, we have a different accent than white Baltimoreans. They say like horn and the Oreos, and we say the orals. So we have different flow as well. And I would assume in Chicago more our vanilla brothers would sound a little bit different than our darker brothers. Is that true?
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. I don't ever really notice the accent here. Like I said, it's mostly when I'm out of town, I hear people notice it.
I got you. Okay. Now, are you a big like Chicago sports fan? I know you're a big sports city. Are you a big sports fan yourself? Yeah. Big Bulls fan. I was a big Bears fan for a while. I don't know, man. It's hard to be a Bears fan, man. I of course was not around for the Super Bowl win in '85, and
So it's just kind of like waiting and hoping this team is going to get it together for decades has been painful experience.
Yeah, it's interesting as a Baltimorean being a Ravens fan and seeing, Chicago, the 85 Bears, great defense, no doubt. There's an ESPN 30 for 30 coming out about the Baltimore Ravens fan was arguably Baltimore Ravens team in the 2000, arguably one of the greatest defenses of all time, if not the greatest, right next to 85 Bears as well. So it's so interesting that I want your perspective on Justin Fields as a Chicagoan, because as a Baltimorean, we have an issue too with Lamar Jackson, where two brothers at quarterback. In my opinion, Lamar is a former league MVP. He's extremely talented. He's done everything that the organization has asked him, and he deserves the bag. I mean, guaranteed money. If Deshaun got 230, then give him 240. Guaranteed. Whatever you need to do, figure it out, because no one wants to go back to when we had bad quarterbacks. So my question to you, my football guy as you are, Mr. Lindsey, talk about Justin Fields. What is your perception of him, and do you think you guys long term on him, or what's the feeling in Chicago about Justin Fields, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know what the feeling in the city is. Like I said, I watch every now and then, but I don't watch as heavily as I used to.
Okay, gotcha.
But from when I do watch, I do think that he's good. I think that he's, I don't want to say set up to fail, but he's kind of in a situation where he just doesn't have the weapons to look as impressive as he should. And this has been a long-standing thing with Bears quarterbacks, that he doesn't really have the offensive line either, and so I think that he is good. I just think that the team isn't good, and so I think it makes him look less effective than he should be.
Okay. Well, I hope that they keep him. I think they give him a long term, just give him an opportunity. Like you said, build. They got plenty of draft picks. They got plenty of money. They got like one of the highest payrolls right now. I mean, in terms of cap space. So if they can invest in space in some offensive line and really give that young man an opportunity, I think he's extreme. He throws the ball well. He's very fast. We've seen that. So it's kind of a similar thing with Lamar's going through. Our issue is that Lamar, no doubt, is all around great quarterback, and we've given him a great tight end, great running backs, a great defense. But the Ravens historically have never been able to develop wide receivers ever. Like ever. Ever. I'm going to say it 3 times.
Yeah, and I mean, the Bears are not really known for having great quarterbacks. Like a lot of times our offense is based on having like a good running game. And so, yeah, I think it's still touch and go with us having a good quarterback. I mean, hilariously to say it, I think our best quarterback numbers wise is probably Jay Cutler, and that's a lot. Like a lot of other quarterbacks are like I'm just been trying to think like the last decade of Bears quarterbacks, and
Rex Grossman.
There are a lot of terrible names in there. Rex Grossman, Mike Lennon, what's the guy? Just bad. I'm just saying
Trubisky.
Trubisky, geez. So yeah, I think that he's definitely the best quarterback that we've drafted. Because we haven't had a chance to draft this high and get a quarterback. I mean, we did with Trubisky, and we made this bonehead drafting. But yeah, I like Fields a lot. I just think that they've got to get a solid team around him.
No question about it. Another thing that I really admire about Chicago that's very similar to Baltimore as well is house music. And where I'm from in Baltimore, we call it club music, or AKA house music, but it's the beats and the dances that we do, the high BPM music, and we dance. Is that something that you are into as a Chicagoan? Do you into the house music or like that type of culture in Chicago as well, or no?
Yeah, I mean, my big bro is a big house fan. And so, like I came up hearing a lot of house music. I can't say like I'm like this house aficionado, because house house fans are very, I don't know how to put this. They are very territorial about their music, and so when you talk to certain house fans, they are kind of music snobs. So I can't say that I'm like the most I'm like the most knowledgeable house guy, but I do like house music.
Yeah. Same thing with Baltimore. We have some famous DJs from here, and that's true. Depending on who you talk to, you know, especially if you're talking about for people who were around in the '80s, in the early '90s, there is a sophistication, and they all have all their records, and they're telling you history. But it depends on who you talk to. They can make you feel like, okay, I don't really know anything. So, you know, but we back home when I was growing up, the famous DJ we had was DJ K Swift, and she was really important for the early 2000s. And she's basically a saint in Baltimore when it comes to house music. So we have our little dance moves and everything on YouTube, and a big dance culture. Now, are you one of those guys? I've seen some of the Chicago moves, man. Detroit and Chicago got some different. They call them different things. But do you have any of those dance moves yourself? I know a couple Baltimore moves, but a lot of the stuff I'm not agile enough to do, so I don't even try to partake. Especially in my 30s, I don't have the flexibility that's necessary. But do you know any of those dances yourself?
Nah, you're not gonna see me out here doing that footwork challenge that people are doing on TikTok. Not gonna see it.
Oh man, that's so dope. I just talking to a first Chicago. There's like my favorites. I love people from Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, and I do like LA people for some weird reason. I don't know, just certain cultures, certain people from certain areas. So getting out of the sports stuff and kind of getting into food, because, you know, Chicago is a great food place, no doubt. And you have the right to feel proud of that. Are you a pizza eater at all?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I know that the great Chicago and New York pizza debate is always a thing. And I have to listen to New Yorkers every time they come here, trash deep dish pizza and tell me this isn't really pizza. This is like a lasagna. It's like a cake. It's not pizza. And it's like, you know, you can get thin crust pizza here. I tell people that all the time. It's like, you don't have to eat deep dish pizza. But the thing is, a lot of tourists like deep dish pizza. And I think it's hilarious that you have so many people that come here and they're like, this is not real pizza. It's cool. I like it, but it's not pizza. It's like, yeah, but you guys all come here and you take like the tourist pictures eating it. You guys love it. Like, it's just like, it's a specialty thing that you can get in Chicago, and you guys come here and eat it. So I don't understand, why do you complain about it afterwards?
Wow, that's so weird, man, that people come. It's like a catch-22. I like deep dish pizza personally, and I want to say something that may be controversial, but I'm gonna stick with the pizza thing because I'm a pizza aficionado, right? Now, if I want to get the best pizza, period, I don't care if deep dish, thin crust, etc., the best greasiest cheese that will make me use Proactive for my skin, where can I get the best pizza in your personal opinion? I'm not trying to put you can name a couple places. You don't have to put yourself under the microscope. What are some of your favorite places to actually get some good pizza?
I mean, as a Southsider, I think Beggars is up there.
Beggars?
Yeah, Beggars. I think, Giordano's is also a staple. Lumonati's. They're also just like random hole in the wall places you can find great pizza. It's weird being like from a city where it's kind of like you can get good pizza anywhere. And so when you go to places that are not like known for pizza, and like I see like people eating Domino's or something, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, are you eating this terrible takeout pizza? Like, you can get good pizza somewhere else. And they're like, oh, well, sorry, sir, we don't live in Chicago. But like, nah, you don't have to eat that.
There's a new thing called like Golden Panda or something like that, where you can order, like, if I want a Chicago pizza, they could send it to me in like, basically they wrap it in like they freeze it somehow, and you can order it and you can have it sent directly to your home. So there's like a service that does that. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't. But I do know that a lot of restaurants up here, you can get frozen pizzas from their restaurants.
Yeah.
So I've heard that before. And I've also seen Giordano's in other cities. And I've seen, like, you can get Chicago-style pizza other places.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm going to say something controversial. Philly talks about how they get the great cheesesteaks and blah, blah, blah. Definitely great. But Baltimore got something to say when it comes to the cheesesteak game. If I took you back home in the city, whether it's the west side where I'm from, or take you over on the east side, I got some spots that you can get some cheesesteaks. Now you might have to get in and get out as soon as you get in and get out. But at certain times of the day, you don't want to be up in there. But I can get you some cheesesteaks, and so I think that would be really cool. But okay, so cool. So now another place I've had, because it's over here where I live now, and I don't know, and people from Chicago said it's not exactly the same. But I've had Harold's Chicken. Isn't it still, to my knowledge, the Harold's Chicken is still in business, the original one, right? Like the first restaurant?
Yeah, there are Harold's all over the city.
Okay. But I'm saying like restaurant number one, like the very first Harold's is still open, right?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
Don't quote me, of course. I don't know where it is.
Okay, I got you. I like the sauce.
Miles House is a Chicago institution. I feel like, I guess like in the DMV, it's Mambo sauce that you guys use, but
yeah, like, well, Baltimore we're different. DC, they do Mambo. We do something totally different. Totally different culture. Just like saying saying DC and Baltimore is like saying Detroit and Chicago. Two different. Close enough, but not really. I get what you're saying. But Mambo sauce is good too. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna disrespect DC. Mambo sauce is legit. So yeah.
Yeah, no, Miles House is definitely a thing here. You can get it in most like hood restaurants. But yeah, no, Harold's is a staple. I've heard people come here and go, "Oh, this is overrated." But it's kind of like anything that's like a staple of fast food. It's like going to Atlanta and having Varsity, right?
Yeah,
because Varsity is such a big deal in Atlanta. It's like, well, what is the big to do? It's just like burgers and hot dogs. It's like, I don't know if it's just like it's tied to so much nostalgia in the city, but Harold's is kind of the same way. Like, I mean, yeah, it's just chicken and fries and sauce, but it's just like, it's been one of those things that's been around my entire life. And so, people swear by it. And I say all the time, like, it depends on the Harold's. Some of those Harold's in the downtown area or in the suburbs. Nah, I'm good. I need it to have the bulletproof glass, and I need it to be a little bit shady on the outside, man. I need to feel a little bit unsafe to know that this chicken is going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, you got to put your timer in there. Man, I tell people I want the credit. I want the health department score to be a C. That's what I need it to be for me to really be like. It can't be an A. I need it to be right around that C plus, and that's how I know it's going to be good. I need the chairs to be jacked up. You know what I'm saying? And I might be able to get like tetanus if I get scratched by a chair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there are a lot of Mexican restaurants like out in the west side. Like it needs to be in an area off to the side where it's like, okay, where am I going? And that food I know the food is going to be good.
Oh yeah, no question about it. Okay, so let's go down to Chicago culture. Talk about hip hop a little bit, and then we'll get into Grapsody and everything. Talk about some of your favorite, because Grapsody is a part music, culture and stuff. Who would be some of your favorite rappers and why specifically? For me, my favorite rapper, period, I got Talib Kweli, Mos Def, Common. Common is probably one of I would say he's my top 5. Just the dude is a poet. It's almost unfair that he's that people consider him just a rapper, because he's literally a poet, and it's like his flow and his style and his capabilities and his words and his storytelling is bar none. So talk to me a little bit about some of your people that you look up from in the hip hop or community from Chicago.
I'm a huge Lupe fan. Like, I mean, like all the way from the first album up. I mean, I've listened to all his mixtapes as well. Huge Lupe fan. So, I mean, even like if you look at everything we've done with our podcast, like I've pointed this out to many people, but in the graphic we used for all of our reveals for the podcast, I'm wearing a hoodie from the Cool tour. Okay. And there's like a bunch of other things like from the podcast that are like Lupe references.
So one of my favorite songs is "Catch Me I'm Ballin'."
Yeah,
that song. if people haven't heard that song from Lupe, it's like, I think it was on 2K back in the day. Actually, I first heard it on 2K. I'm pretty sure, and I was like, yeah, it was on 2K. Definitely was on 2K, and I was like, bro. I remember when he was in the first Complex magazine, when he first started popping. Well, for me as a Baltimorean, I started reading Complex, and I saw they had like an article on him, and I'm like, who is this? Because I grew up my whole life wearing glasses, and I was like, who is this dude with glasses that got the swag and cool? And he's like on Complex magazine. I still remember to this day, and that was, I don't know what year that was, but it was quite a while ago before people really got into him. So, talk a little bit about what Lupe means to you, because he goes against traditional. He would talk about more sophisticated things. He really was more thought provoking, and he has such a rich perspective about hip hop. So, talk to me a little bit about why Lupe really resonates with you personally so much.
Well, I discovered Lupe at the time when, I was still trying to, figure out who I was as a person. So I think like his first album dropped, I think that was my sophomore year of college. Mm-hmm. And I had never seen a rapper that just kind of like moved like he did. I mean, when I first went to see him live, he had a Wii Ninja. I don't know if you remember those. Like, it's like a plush ninja that was like on a chain on his pocket. He talked about playing Game Boy Advance. He was like in anime and all these things that I was into at the time. Mm-hmm. And it just resonated with me. It connected with me because, I am from a very, I don't want to say violent area. It's not violent, but I'm from a very, urban. We'll say urban because that is what the whites will say.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I got you.
We're a very urban area, and so. But I wouldn't consider myself a street dude. I'm not a dude that hangs out, and I'm not a dude that subscribes to any of that stuff. And so there are a lot of rappers I like, but I don't really connect with their story or where they come from. But I connect a lot with Lupe's story just because of just the things he's interested in, just him talking about being a smart guy, but also being a rapper. He just didn't look or do anything like any of the other rappers that I was into at the time. And so I just was big into him. And then, like I said, he's from my hometown. He's from the West Side.
Oh, word up. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's just like I've always been a fan. And I mean, I saw him live in college for free, actually.
Oh, wow, really?
This is at the time of MySpace. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But when his first album came out, he had this thing going on his MySpace where it's like, hey, send me a message to go to a surprise show in Chicago. And I was like, all right, send them a message. And they'll send you back like the location for free show. And so I went. He did a lot of the songs off of, I don't know how much of a Lupe fan you are, but off of his mixtape Fahrenheit 115. He did Failure. He did all this stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest shows I've been to. And at the time, like it was like right after his grandmother died. I don't know if you remember on his first album, he dedicated it to his grandmother. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In fact, when he used to say peace and much love to you, because that's something he got from his grandmother. And he was performing a song on stage, and he like broke into tears. And I'm just like, rappers don't do that. Rappers don't like cry, and it's just like, so I'm like, I just the fact that he's just so different and so honest and so vulnerable, I've always related to that.
Yeah,
and then I just think that he's one of the best lyricists there.
Oh, no question about it. No question about it.
I think that he's a step above the rest. I mean, of course, I've been a big Common fan for a long time. I think One Day It All Makes Sense is a great album. Mm-hmm. He had a string of great albums up from Resurrection up. I wasn't the biggest Electric Circus fan.
Oh, no.
But, I mean, a single off that album did hit. You can't, I can't hate on that single. But I think working with Kanye and getting to have like a resurgence in the 2000s was like a great time. I feel like the food and like The Corner and all that stuff off of Go. Go is one of my favorite hip hop albums as well. B, that's the name of the album. Go is the single off of it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a big Common fan, big Twister fan. Mm-hmm. big fan of a young kid named Saba from the city. I know.
Yeah, I heard of him. Saba. I heard of him. Mm-hmm.
Saba is dope. His last album was great. He's actually had 3 very good albums in my opinion. Of course, like was a big Chance fan when Chance was popping off. I mean, reluctant to say now because Kanye is kind of all over the place now, but Kanye was the biggest thing coming out of this city at one point. And man,
if you put Chicago's top 5 lyricists versus any other city, I think they could stand it. They could stand the ground. They could really, as a city, you guys really do that. One of my favorite songs from Common, aka Common Sense, is "Take It Easy." One of his old songs, "Take It Easy." Yeah. And I was like, the way he was flowing on the beat. I watched the music video, like, bro, I've watched it like at least 30 times. I'll probably watch it when we get off, because I'm a hip hop head. I'm like, but I try not to be elitist because I love lyricism and context and story. I tell people I'm gonna tell you something crazy. I talked about this with DJ. You know Eloquent, the music producer.
Yeah, Eloquent is dope, man. He's a big supporter of the podcast.
Yes, he comes on my podcast all the time. We do AEW recaps together. So Eloquent is a close friend of mine up in Toronto. So shouts out to my boy Eloquent. There's always good vibes with Eloquent. Just a great human being, and he's a great co-host as well on this podcast when we talk about AEW, which is one of his favorite things to talk about. But I'm gonna say, I told him something controversial. He agreed. I was like, "That's how I know you're a real hip hop dude." I said, honestly, one of the best rappers in all of hip hop, period, is Saul Williams. And he was like, yo, wow. He was like, I agree. I was like, see, you got to really, really be into hip hop if you know Saul Williams. You know what I'm saying? And understand that brother's a poet laureate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like I said, it's almost unfair because he's so sophisticated. I used to watch Def Comedy. I mean, not Def Comedy, Def Poetry Jam. And they would have these guys come in and really show their lyricism. And, Saul Williams, Kanye, like you said, Lupe Fiasco. It really, me and you really resonate in a hip hop place. I'm appreciative of you sharing that as well. So let's hop into growing up, because this is a pro wrestling podcast and we talk about culture, music, a wide variety of things, but I really want to know about you, my good friend. What was it like growing up? Did you start off with WCW, WWF? Kind of give us your pro wrestling origin story of how you got into this beautiful thing in the squared circle.
I was solely a WWF fan for a long time. And what really got me into wrestling was the magazines. I don't know why, but I'm a visual person. And so the first thing that really got me into it was just seeing like the covers of WWF magazine. I had a friend that collected them. Oh, wow. And so one of the first ones I saw was Undertaker on the front, like old school Undertaker with the tie and Paul Bearer with the urn and everything. And just that image was so striking to me as a kid. I was like, what is this? And so that got me to watching it from then on. I kind of stayed just a WWF fan for, I think, like at least most of my childhood. I didn't get into other promotions until I got older. Wow.
So that's so dope. You talk about the magazine collection, no doubt. That's like every kid's dream back in the day. Like, I got to get every case. Do you have a collection now?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But yeah, my friend used to collect them. I don't know if he still does.
Okay. My co-host for everything else, WWE and just regular stuff, Randall, he's a huge collector of magazines, DVDs, memorabilia. One day I want to get to that point where I have a room dedicated just to pro wrestling, and I need to have all my belts and titles and all that, the whole shebang. You know what I mean? That's super dope. So growing up, who are some of your favorite wrestlers? For me personally, I love DDP. I love Booker T, DDP, The Rock, D'Lo Brown, and I'll go even, I love Bam Bam Bigelow too as a kid. What are some of your favorite guys that you remember in your mind, like really resonated with you personally?
From the earlier era, I was a big Macho Man fan. I mean, it's just something about Macho Man, like just the way he cut his promos, just the way
Slim Jim commercials,
and everything. He just was just such a larger than life guy. Of course, like The Rock, like when The Rock was hot, like there was nothing bigger than The Rock.
Like 99 Rock, 2000 Rock.
Yeah. When around that time period, like you couldn't get bigger than The Rock. Of course, like most people were Austin fans as well. I was a big RVD fan at one point. Like RVD is so dope to me.
Yeah, tell me why.
He just moved different than most guys that I saw at that time. He just had this charisma. He had this way, this swag about him. I always thought he was dope. Trying to think anybody else from that era. Yeah, I like Booker as well. I think Harlem Heat is one of the best tag teams ever.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I wasn't as big of a WCW fan, but everything I knew about Harlem Heat and Booker T, yeah, I did like them.
The brothers were serious.
But yeah, I mean, in the older, I kind of slid out of wrestling during the Ruthless Aggression era.
Oh, me too. The back end of it, I did, definitely.
I wasn't that into like the Cena stuff. I wasn't into like what they were doing with like the
Heidenreich
stuff. Yeah, it's just some of the other stuff. Like I just wasn't into it. But I got back into wrestling because of CM Punk, and I think CM Punk at that time brought a lot of people back. Because I remember when he cut the pipe bomb, and I remember people that I knew that were either Lapse fans or didn't watch, and just like, I don't know, just the all around this promo at the time, and just how much that got people more interested in wrestling again.
No question about it. Yeah, I got back in because of John Moxley, aka Dean Ambrose. Yeah, it just got to a point right in the back end of the Ruthless Aggression era. I was like, oh god, this is just ugh. It was just almost, because it's almost insulting your intelligence, some of the stuff they were doing, and I was like, yeah, let me just take a break. And then I got back into it right around, and it's so funny thing, I had some coworkers, I think I got right back, maybe 2014, 2015, got back into it. I had some coworkers who were like, yeah, Dean Ambrose and the Shield. I'm like, what? And I'm watching, I'm like, yo, and then the network came out, and then I just got right back passionate again. I was like, yeah, it's back. It's unshakable at this point. So I think we all have those lows, and it's so interesting you talk about that. You see CM Punk being from the Chicagoland area. So let's get into Grapsody. Talk about, for the audience, that's what they're here to listen to, right? Talk about how Grapsody came along. You guys are on Fightful, one of the most respected, the fastest growing, one of the top, considered probably not number top 2 or 3. Just pro wrestling, MMA, combat sports, news organizations, period. And so that's a huge thing. And to see 3 brothers of color, I think I was on YouTube, and I used to just kind of see Fightful every now and again. I was like, But then your show came up on, I think it was noon time on Saturdays, right? And I've donated. I've sent some money to you guys, and you guys even said, hey, thanks WWE Podcast, or whatever the case may be. And you guys even acknowledged that. But it was so good to see 3 young men of color, black men, talking about pro wrestling on such a big platform. So kind of walk us through that story, man. So yeah, Grapsody, as you said, is every Saturday at noon Eastern time. And that is featuring me, Righteous Reg, and Will Washington. I was, I don't know, I don't want to say anti doing a podcast for a long time, but I did a lot of guest spots on podcasts, but I did not have my own podcast for a while. And I got asked a few times, why don't you have a podcast? And I'm like, I'm good. I don't really need it. But I became friends with Righteous Reg, like right around the time when I really started getting into wrestling Twitter, and when I started doing a little bit of writing through Daily DDT and other things, he was one of the biggest supporters of it. And I, at the time, I didn't know him. He used to run the Black Wrestling account, and so that's how I would interact with him. He did not have his profile pickup. He didn't have his name on his account. It was just a Black Wrestling account. Now, he's always seen my man. He'd send me messages, or he would share my articles. And I'm like, yeah, he's cool people. So we've been friends for a while. I would say that we've been friends longer than I've known Will Washington. So he used to do a podcast on his YouTube channel, and every now and then me and Andrew Thompson would do it with him. And so,
like a lot of times I was like, yeah, this is fun. Like it's different when I do it with you guys, and I've done so many different other guest spots with podcasts. So I'm like, when I do it with Reg, it's like different because we're friends and we have a different experience recording together.
Definitely.
And so I met Will. I want to say that was 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I did an episode of RBR with him. I did the post show for. I want to say that was which AEW show was it with the exploding
barbed wire, the countdown.
Barbed wire man.
I bought that pay per view. Yeah, I bought that pay per view. I remember that. Everyone was so good times, bro. Good times in AEW. Yeah, I got to go back and watch, bro. I got to go watch those. Some of those early pay-per-views at AEW were very entertaining and just very different than what you're normally used to seeing from a major wrestling company. And it was good. It was refreshed. I have it on my Bleacher Report. I have all my, because you can go back to all of your pay-per-views. So I think it was maybe, let me see. Let me look it up real quick. But go ahead, finish your story. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which pay-per-view that was. Whichever pay-per-view that was, I believe it was Revolution off the top of my head. I could be wrong. But we did the post show for that for RBR, and it went well. It went great. After we did it, we talked for a long time on Skype, and we kind of just had this conversation as two black men that have podcasted or worked in media. And I told him, me and Reg record podcasts sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Reg kind of like DM each other about stuff we see on Twitter, and just kind of I don't know, it's kind of like we have our own ecosystem when it comes to talk about wrestling outside of what most people see.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was kind of like this I don't want to say, it's kind of like group therapy for me, because at the time on RBR, he was the only black host on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some of it was us talking about, our feelings about certain things we see in wrestling, and certain things we see on wrestling Twitter. Certain things that we believe as fans, I remember telling him at the time that I was a big Swerve fan. I didn't know that Swerve was his cousin at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Swerve is so talented.
We had a whole conversation about Swerve, and
mm-hmm.
I don't know, we just got along famously from then on. And so he ended up doing something on Saturdays, separate from RBR, called Wrestling with the Weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I came on and I did an episode the Saturday after Punk debuted on Rampage.
Oh, wow.
And so, matter of fact, I got my ticket to that show from Will. I ended up buying a ticket off.
Oh, that's dope. Uh-huh.
And so I went to that show. Still one of the best live experiences ever, being there for Punk's debut.
History, brother.
Just history. You're right. Just in the United Center. Just an amazing experience. And so we recorded the day after, and this thing ended up being pretty popular. After we got off, full circle moment. After we got off, he told me, he said, yeah, you could see in the chat, somebody came in, and their username was T-Con. And so at the time, we thought, like, it's just somebody just, like, using name. And, like, around that time, I believe Tony followed him, like, shortly after that.
Oh, wow.
And so, fast forward, Reggie also ended up being on Wrestling with the Weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even before that, like, we had conversations. Even when I talked to Will after we did RBR, me and Reg had conversations like, yeah, we should do something with Will sometime. We should do like a podcast or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Reg did Wrestling with the Weekend with Will, they got along famously as well. And he's like, yeah, we should do this again. And Reg was like, yeah, we should have Phil on when we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like the light bulb moment for Will, because he was looking for something else to do outside of RBR. And he said, yeah, maybe we should do this. So he called me in the middle of the week one day, and he said, hey, I want I want to pick your brain on something. Call me back when you get a chance. And so we all on Skype and we talked about it. And he was like, yes, I think we should do a podcast. He was like, Reg is, and I said at the time, he was like, I've done stuff with Reg, and I said, I'm just going to tell you out, Reg, I don't want to do this if Reg is not involved.
Okay.
And so, we were kind of the same page. And so then it became just like the three of us. And in the midst of that, us getting together ideas for what we wanted to do as a podcast, Will came up with the name Grapsody, and he pitched it to Fightful.
He pitched it to Fightful. Wow.
Yeah. Will pitched it to Fightful. And just so happened, I've had a pretty good relationship with Sean. And, Sean knew of Reg beforehand. So he was in. He was all in on the three of us as the podcast.
Wow.
And I felt like we could bring something to Fightful that they don't have.
Definitely.
And most wrestling outlets don't have. Wrestling outlets don't have a podcast that's hosted by three black men, and it doesn't have like our unique perspective. So I felt like we brought something different.
Definitely.
Not just to Fightful, but just to wrestling podcasting. And that's not to say that we're the only black wrestling podcast. Of course, there are a lot of great black podcasters out there. But I also feel like our perspective on wrestling is different. And so I just wanted to do something different. I wanted to bring something different to the table. And so doing it with those guys felt like it was something I wanted to do. Because like I said, to bring this full circle to the beginning, I wasn't big into doing a podcast, but I wanted to do it with my friends. And I feel like it's been a rewarding experience to do something that doesn't feel like, well, because my friends, it's just us getting on and talking about wrestling and things we enjoy. So like I said, Will came up with the name Grapsody. In the midst of us coming up with other stuff, Reg sent us something that he recorded on a ride home from a wrestling show, which ended up becoming our intro to our show.
Wow, that's so dope.
And it just kind of came together quick like that. And I kind of came up with the idea for our merch and stuff right away. And we got a great logo from Grapsody, who's friends with Will Washington. Everything came together pretty fast. And when I really look back at that time, it's like it did really happen really fast. Even as getting on with Fightful, it just, I don't know, it just happened pretty quick. And then, of course, like Will had to finish up with RBR, and we did the rollout for what we were doing with the podcast. We put out all our reveals for the show, and that was cool. And just having starting the Twitter account and people supporting the podcast without co-hosts or anything named for it. It was just like, oh, that logo's kind of cool. It's with Fightful. I wonder what this is. And I remember the first host announced for it, and just seeing us pop up like, I don't know, like a few hundred followers just off me being attached to it, and then Reg being attached to it. And then once the three of us were attached to it, people were in. And yeah, I'm just grateful that people support it. I'm grateful that people like the podcast. I get stuff all the time from people either online or in person that connect with it. I think that's dope.
Yeah. Man, I'm just so thankful that there is a voice out there. It's encouraging to me as an independent podcaster here at the WWB Sports Podcast, and just wanted to give you gentlemen your flowers and acknowledge you guys and say just keep up the good work. And I look forward to continuing this relationship with you guys and maybe going to a show with you guys one day in the near future. So man, so thankful for you to come on today. Where can they find you, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at PhilDO616. Of course, you can watch Grapsody on Saturdays at noon Eastern on Fightful's YouTube channel. I believe we're also available on most of the streaming platforms. I think I'm on Instagram too. I always forget my Instagram. It's a Bears reference. Funny enough. Dread Grossman on Instagram. You find my writing at Bleacher Report. Sometimes at Daily DDT as well.
Love that. One of my good friends, Alfred Quinoa, is on Bleacher Report. So you probably talk to him a couple times too as well, right?
Oh no, I don't. I think he's at Forbes now. I don't.
He does
see
Forbes,
him
but he
on-
sometimes does Bleachers stuff too.
Okay.
So that's awesome. So folks, thanks for coming on the WWB podcast. We look forward to continuing to support these brothers and bring on great voices like my brother Phil here. So folks, thanks for coming on the WWB podcast. We are out.